people that were standing in between songs. They were very energetic. They were singing along, and the guy that I told you that I sat next to, was his first show. He was very impressed. So I think even if it is a first show for people, that they would walk away satisfied as well.
Well, how did the band sound, Lacy? Because, what's interesting about Dream Theater, and mainly, I guess, let me just highlight, or let's focus in on James LaBrie, because I think, consistently, the band sounds incredible. Petrucci sounds great every single time. I mean, the band's just one of the tightest bands that you'll ever hear, especially live. But let's be honest, LaBrie's vocal performances, especially live, been all over the place. Sometimes he's fantastic. Other times you're like, oh my gosh, what happened? But yet, on the astonishing, and Biv and I said this in the review, and I know you said this on Lady Obscure, James LaBrie sounded the best I've heard him on any album in a decade. Easy. How did he sound live?
Yeah, he was great live. I mean, he's kind of got the thing where, at least for me, I've noticed when he gets in the higher octave, it's hard to understand him with the enunciation. But his voice was clear as far as the pitch. He was, in tune. He sounded great. He had one little moment. It was really kind of funny. I guess when he was singing, he's like, I'm choking on my own spit. And he kind of had to regroup. But that was the only off moment in the whole concert. As far as his vocal performance. And I think in the last couple of concerts, he sounded really good. I know he had some voice damage a while back, and I know that I think he's finally healed from that, and he's sounding really good these days.
Now, I know they played the entire Astonishing album. Did they do anything else, or was that the entire show?
That was it. It was the album, and that was it. There was the opener that you hear on the album. They had the intermission at the same time on the album, in the Act 2 beginning. And then they finished it out. They had everybody singing on 1,000 Voices, that song, at the very end. And then they thanked everybody, and the end. No encore. No other music from past albums. That was it. And It was about 2.5 or 3 hours.
Oh, I bet. Absolutely. Now, this is something that absolutely begs to be a DVD release. Have you seen any talk about that at all, Lacy, of something that, if for some reason the fans who aren't able to see them as they come through your town, or they're not able to see them live, has there been any talk about a DVD recording of this concert specifically, or no?
I'm not certain, but I know a lot of people would like that because their tour dates are not very expansive in the U.S., especially in the South. I had heard the night before us in Baltimore, they were at Radio City Music Hall in New York City, and I heard they might have been taping for a DVD at that show.
Sweet.
But I'm not certain. They might be entertaining the idea. I just don't know which show it will be or if it's a definite, but I think they might be considering it. But I know there are a lot of people who came to our show from all over North Carolina. And actually, I don't know if you know Halcyon Way, the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Atlanta. 2 of the guys from the band drove up from Atlanta to see this show.
Really?
And and they met up with us in line, and we were chatting for a while that they left like 10 p.m. the night before, drove for 10 hours.
Oh,
they stopped and looked at D.C. for a little bit because they were supposed to be playing with Queensryche when we had our blizzard in January. And so they didn't get to see D.C. at all because they couldn't even get into the city. So they did a real quick car stop through the town, and then they kept on driving to Baltimore and crashed for a little while, had dinner, met us at the concert, enjoyed the concert. They flew the next day back to Atlanta.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's pretty crazy.
Incredible.
That's cool. Now, speaking of New York, let me ask you, the concert I'm almost more jealous of that I didn't get to attend that you did was Avantasia in New York City. And Avantasia is a band that does a good amount of touring. It's just not here. They usually will hit the East Coast with one show. Maybe they'll hit Toronto. Maybe they'll hit L.A. And that's it. And that's really nothing more of, we'll stop in L.A. because we're probably heading to Japan. And maybe we'll, stop, in either New York or Toronto, the very, very far east of North America, and call it a day. So it's a show I've never been able to see, and incredibly jealous that you got a chance to see that. But another event-like concert, not something that is just a just a band shows up and performs. There's a lot behind it, and a lot of theatrics, and a lot, guest vocalists, and et cetera, et cetera. Which is probably why it's not the easiest tour to pull off and bring around the world. But tell us what you thought of Toby and the rest of the guys at Avantasia. What did you think?
Yeah, that was another great show. Like you said, they tour more in Europe and other places. Actually, the Anaheim and New York shows on this tour were the very first time they had played the U.S. They have not been to North America as Avantasia before. So that was a huge thing. And so there was a lot riding on these concerts. The New York show had a good amount of people at it. And actually, Toby was very surprised at the response. He said, I can't even believe this is a North American show.
Wow.
Yeah, which is kind of like, I don't know if that's an
good and
insult or
sad at the
compliment.
same time.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. But I mean, you could tell they were electrified by the response. I mean, and they went nonstop, 3.5 hours total, no intermission, just them.
So no opener, no nothing.
No opening band, no nothing. No intermission, no breaks, no nothing. And in fact, they did a lot of chatting in between songs, so it kind of kept going longer and longer, which I don't think anybody minded. But it got to the point where he said, if we keep playing, we'll get fined because it'll be past curfew. But, we don't care. And they did the whole set.
Wow. And Toby is a great front band, so he's a lot of fun, truly a character. So I'm sure, in order to kind of give the guys a break, he, was yucking it up with you guys and joking around and stuff like that. He's really good at that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was very friendly with the crowd. Of course, they had, I guess, 7 vocalists there. And then, of course, the band who played all the music, so they have a high amount of stamina right there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was great. I was happy to see Jorn Landa sing finally. That was the first time I've been able to sing.
See, that's the part I'm almost even more upset that I didn't get to see. I love
And that was
Jorn.
my next question, was the guest vocalist. Obviously, Jorn was there, but who else were you surprised to see? Anybody?
Yeah, Michael Kiska was there. From Halloween a while back, sings with Amanda Somerville on their duet albums. They have 2 of those out now, and Amanda Somerville was also there singing.
Oh, wow.
A lot of background vocals, but I think she did a little bit of some lead vocals as well. Eric Martin was there, actually, from Mr. Big. Ronnie Atkins was there from Pretty
nice.
Maids.
Nice.
Yeah, Herbie Langens was there singing. And then Oliver Hartman, who did lead guitar, he did a lot of vocals too. So, and then of course Toby. So it was a full complement. It was a great concert. They didn't stop. And they did a lot from Ghostlights, but they did a lot from the past discography as well. So I thought they might do kind of like a Dream Theater thing and do like the whole Ghostlights album front to back. But they did I think 6 songs from Ghostlights and then a bunch from a lot of other albums all the way back to the beginning. So
cool.
It was a nice set list.
Very cool. So of the 2 shows that you saw, Lacy, which one, I know they're obviously way different, but which one was the one that you're like, oh man, that was an outstanding show? Or were both of them really in that category?
Gosh, I don't know if I could choose because they really are different. I don't know, maybe Avantasia, just because it's not something you see every day. And it was really an energetic performance. And I got to see a lot of people that I might not be able to see otherwise.
Very cool. Very cool. So what's going on? What's new with Lady Obscure, or what's going on with yourself in regards to some things that not only us as fans of the website and what you write and et cetera like that, but the listeners as well? What are some things that are new that are going on Lady Obscure that you maybe want to share with us?
Oh, well, there's lots of reviews going up by the whole team. I'm, of course, working on my own reviews. Hoping to do some that are coming up, releasing on June 3rd, or some of the new ones that I'm looking at. Signum Regis came out with an album in November, but they're re-releasing it on LP on June 3rd with a new mix. So I'm going to review that one. And Witham is coming out with a new album on June 3rd as well. So I'm looking at doing that. So that's the stuff coming up in the very near future.
Excellent. That's all, Jason. If you got anything else, that's all I got.
Okay. I'll edit this then. All right. Well,
Okay.
Lacy, by the way, give our listeners a way that they can follow you, whether it's on social media, or what's the best way to contact you to follow what you're doing?
I think probably the best way to catch me is on Facebook under Lacy Mucklow.
Well, you should do that. I know I do that. I know Biv does that. Lacy, you are awesome. Once again, thanks for joining us on the show, giving us your reviews of Dream Theater and Avantasia live, while Biv and I sat at home like a bunch of bums. But thanks again for joining us, giving us the scoop, and we'd love to, of course, always have you back on the show, because you just simply make it that much more professional when you're on with us. So,
Thank you very much. I always appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Lacy.
Hi, it's Marcus Michael from the band Dante, and you're listening to According to Metal.
Joining us on According to Metal this week, and I got to hand it to Biv. Biv once again lands another incredible guest of another incredible band that maybe a lot of you haven't got a chance to hear yet, but you certainly need to. And by the end of this interview, we know you're definitely going to want to check these guys out. Joining us, of course, on this show is Mark Kennedy, lead vocalist, co-founder of the band Damnation's Day, who has an incredible album that came out a couple years ago, Invisible the Dead, which we'll talk to him about, but also they just recorded a new album, soon to be released. I'm sure we'll find out soon when that will be, and I can't wait to get more details on that. But Mark Kennedy from Damnation's Day. Mark, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks very much for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, well, you're very welcome, Mark. Now, one of the things that I have to ask is, you only have one CD out, and somehow you landed a deal with Nightmare Records, which Lance King was on our show on the very first episode of According to Metal, so he's one of our favorite guys. So you landed a deal with Nightmare Records. You've been on tour with just some amazing names already. You've done things with one CD that many, many, many hundreds, if not thousands of bands out there haven't been able to do in 4 or 5 or 6 CDs. Kind of walk us through, how did that happen?
It's hard to, obviously, it's luck as well. I can't say it's not luck. Right timing and stuff, but I think it's very important these days with the competition, like healthy competition, not saying unhealthy competition, but you have a lot of bands throwing out EPs and half-thought recordings, and we found that if we put the time and money into a really good recording and a really strong debut album, and we really focused on the songwriting and the actual production, and we actually hired a producer for it as well, and helped us out a lot. And it just, the product almost spoke for itself, and we got a lot more attention, and we just presented ourselves a lot more professionally than, no offense to the other bands that do it, because they work unbelievably hard as well, but then throwing out demos and EPs rather than a full production. And I think that it definitely makes a huge difference, even especially overseas as well, because they're just going by first appearances, really.
Well, let me ask you something, Mark, really quick. When you look at your first album, Invisible the Dead, and I'm telling you, folks, if you haven't heard that album, this is a podcast. Pause what I'm saying right now. Go listen to the album and come back, because it'll make it an even better experience for you. But Mark, just an incredible album that you guys wrote, and I have my own thoughts, but what I always find interesting about metal is the genre that a band is put in. So, in your words, as a co-founder of the band, essentially, in 30 seconds, how would you describe the sound of Damnation's Day to somebody who's maybe never heard you before? Okay, so I'd put it in. We just do it plain and simple. It's melodic metal, atmospheric rock, even. It's not power metal. And it's not full-blown progressive metal. It's probably, I'd say, melodic, heavy rock metal with elements of atmospheric metal. There's not much more I can say, because, we get thrown into power metal, we get thrown into prog metal, which I'm quite happy
to be thrown into anywhere, but